Members Parks and Krikorian know that the meeting of the Jobs and Business Development Committee will be convening. If they're not here at 1:12, adjourning this meeting. Just kidding. Just kidding. Why not make it 2 in one day? We're going to go ahead and start the committee meeting and anticipate Mr. Parks and Mr. Krikorian will join us shortly. So let's move forward with item number 1.
Item number 1 is a CLA report on the economic impact of raising the entertainment production cap from $2.5 million to $5 million.
Good afternoon, Councilman John Wickham with the CLA's office, and there is a report now on file concerning this subject matter. The business tax on productions is a bit complicated. It's unique in the way it's structured compared to most of our other business taxes. This has both a minimum component and a maximum component. So any production that is under $2.5 million in total costs has a base fee or a base tax of $145. And then once a production exceeds $12 million in production costs, it has a maximum tax of $12,495. So what this proposal would do is change the minimum tax from the minimum base from 2.5 million to 5 million. So that means that any production that has a production cost of less than $5 million would only pay the minimum of $145 rather than paying some of the other incremental costs. So we've obtained some data from Office of Finance on the fiscal impact of this, which would be a reduction of general fund business tax revenue by $1 million. City generally earns about $3 million under the current tax system, and this change in the tax system would reduce that amount by $1 million. The proposal is aimed at attracting and retaining smaller productions, which have been hit pretty hard by the recession. The commercial producers in particular have had a real hard time. And since the state tax incentives do not assist small productions, this was a proposal that was put forward to help those small productions.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 3 cards on this matter. Mr. Krikorian is just walking in. Mel Cohn. After Mel, we'll have Sarah Walsh, and then Nicole Shahanian. Shahanian, thank you. Phonics, yeah. The handwriting is not phonetical. Mr. Cohn.
Well, good afternoon, Councilman. Thank you for having us appear today. My name is Mel Cohn. I'm a board member of the Valley Industry Commerce Association, VICA, and also a member of the BTAC committee. VICA is here today to express our very strong support for raising the production cap from $2.5 million to $5 million. In our current economic situation downtown, it is vital for Los Angeles to spur business in order to create jobs and grow the economy. One of the specific goals of VICA is to stem the tide of runaway production. Also, the Business Tax Advisory Committee has proposed raising the minimum tax threshold from $2.5 million to a minimum of $5 million. That motion was passed by BTAC. We believe that the entertainment industry is a very important component of our city's economy. It provides over 42,000 jobs in the industry, and direct industry jobs supports 2.7 other jobs. Raising this cap would provide significant tax savings to the small and medium production companies, and it would affect over half of commercial production companies filming in Los Angeles, as well as some other boutique firms. We believe this reform will assist in retaining our current level of film activity and also attract recently displaced production back to Los Angeles. VICA asks that you support raising the cap and move forward quickly on this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah Walsh?
Thank you, Councilman. Sarah Walsh with the Motion Picture Association. I just wanted to briefly mention that this measure has MPAA's full support. We think it sends a great signal to the larger production community that the city is committed to keeping productions here in LA and the jobs that come with those productions, and so we urge your support on this measure, and MPAA is also supportive as well. Thank you.
Nicole Shahanian?
Thank you.
Took 4 testimonies.
Nicole Shahanian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Hollywood Chamber, I'm here to express our strong support for the BTAC recommendation to adjust the entertainment production cap from $2.5 to $5 million. The Chamber believes that this motion will serve as a much-needed tool in the Council's efforts to curb runaway film production in Los Angeles. As you know, runaway production is a serious threat to the local and statewide economy. The entertainment industry is a sound economic engine that contributes significantly to the economic well-being of LA and California as a whole. However, as other cities and competing states successfully use tax incentives to entice film production elsewhere, LA's economic base is weakened. The Chamber believes that a financial commitment to this vital industry is a wise investment for the long-term health of Los Angeles, and we fully support the Council's efforts to provide this tax incentive to help keep film productions in Los Angeles. The BTAC recommendation to raise the minimum threshold would provide significant tax savings to small and medium-sized production businesses at a minimal cost to the city, and will assist in retaining our current level of film activity while bringing recently displaced production back to Los Angeles. The Chamber urges your support of this important motion and thanks you for your efforts to curb runaway production.
Thank you. David Phelps?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is David Phelps. I'm the Director of External Relations for the AICP, and I'm very proud and excited to have this proposal before the committee today. As you know, film production is a very mobile industry, and the smallest of changes in the way that productions are assessed or the way that entitlements are given for productions in the city can have a large impact on filming. This proposal is a modest proposal that we believe will help retain and attract filming to the Los Angeles area in a time where other cities are looking to increase revenues, including other municipalities in our own area currently are trying to increase revenues, and we feel that this is a very modest proposal that sends a very strong message to the production community that the city cares about the small level productions as well as commercial productions, and this is a relatively modest revenue impact on the city that we believe over the next 3 to 5 years will recoup itself and result in more production. So we are very much in support of this measure, as we were one of the introducers of it, and I'd just like to thank Councilmember Alarcon and Councilmember Krikorian for their review and support of this measure, and welcome any questions that you might have about the impact of this potentially.
Thank you. Ed Duffy? No questions.
Hi, Councilman. Thank you for having me. It's Ed Duffy. I'm a business agent with Teamster Local 399. We represent the location managers, the casting directors, and the drivers. here working in Southern California, and we just wanted to say that we support this completely too. Runaway production, as you know, I've harped on this a number of times to everyone here, is an extreme difficulty on every working person here in Los Angeles, and I think that the support of this is very important. Anything we can do to change the tide with all these productions going to Louisiana, Michigan, and New York particularly, we need to bring those back here, and this can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Jennifer Heater?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Heater. I'm Manager of Government Relations and Policy for the Screen Actors Guild. And on behalf of the 70,000 members of Screen Actors Guild that live and work in Southern California, Screen Actors Guild would like to support this motion strongly. We definitely feel the effects of runaway production, and we would like to do anything that will help to stem the tide of runaway production in Southern California. So we strongly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. That terminates our public hearing. Mr. Krikorian, did you have any comments? Okay, then...
Councilman?
Yeah.
There was one decision point that you need to make with regard to the maximum tax, so that the city attorney has a clear instruction on which way to go.
Maximum tax?
The maximum side of the tax, because the way the language in the ordinance is written, it identifies that the actual maximum tax payment amount is $12,495 based on a measurement of $12 million. So if you change, what happens is when you change the minimum amount, it affects those two numbers on the back on the maximum amount, so that you either need to adjust the maximum tax rate or the measure of the maximum tax rate. And those have different implications. If you change the maximum tax rate, that means that absolutely every production that comes into the city and pays the business tax will receive a tax reduction of $3,250. If you change the measure from $12 million to $14.5 million, that means that every production under $12 million will get a reduction in their tax of $3,250. Every production between $12 million and $14.5 million will receive a reduction in their tax liability, but it'll be less, incrementally less, as you get to $14.5 million. And then anybody over $14.5 million would not see any kind of a tax change whatsoever. So that has less of an impact on the general fund revenues than if you change the maximum tax amount.
How would you state that in one line?
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
It's this, because we have this dual minimum tax measure and this maximum tax measure.
Part of the purpose of this measure was not the actual dollar amounts involved, but the message that we're trying to send. And even though the benefits to companies in the higher categories would be minimal on their bottom line, I think the message is that we want to help everybody. So I believe that we want to keep that figure at 12.
You actually want to reduce the figure to $9,100. The CLA recommendation is to change the measure of the tax to 14.5, but to accomplish the concept of sending the message and passing the tax break along to everybody, then you would change the maximum tax to $9,100.
I'm not understanding why what's the difference between the 9 and the 12?
What happens?
They're both based on 12 million.
Yeah. Currently, what happens is after the production costs exceed $2.5 million, the taxpayer is charged $1.30 per thousand, right?
Right.
When you move the base from 2.5 million to 5 million, that extra 2.5 million has a value of $3,250 in taxes paid.
Okay.
So you've removed that $3,250 from the liability. However, at the back end, you haven't adjusted the $12,000. So nobody's ever going to have a liability of $12,000. Mathematically, you could just never get there. So to write the ordinance in a way that's logical and reflects the way the tax is administered, you would need to either change the maximum tax to reduce it by $3,250, or you'd have to move the measure up to 14.5 million to capture that additional $3,250. Does that?
Yeah, I understand that, but then I'm not understanding why it stops at 14.5.
Because 14.5 is the number where the measure balances out to $12,450.
But why would it stop after that?
Because that's the way the tax is structured, that there's a maximum payment of $12,450.
So if we said 12 million and beyond, 12 million and beyond as opposed to 12 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Everything.
Okay. So everybody would get a $9,100 tax break after 12 million.
No, if you changed it to $9,100 as the maximum tax, absolutely everybody would get a $3,250 tax break. If you moved the measure, if you kept 12,000 and you moved the measure to 14.5, everybody up to 12 million would get the 3,000 tax break. Everybody between 12 million and 14.5 would get an incrementally less amount of a tax break, and everybody over 14.5 would not get a tax break at all.
I'm trying to follow the math here.
Assuming static production, what is the difference in revenues to the city between those two options?
I don't have those numbers from the Office of Finance. I would have to go back and get them, but it's probably, it's not the majority of the amount that's lost.
It's lint, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be a small number. Yeah. So, and I think,
this is all right?
Mr. Phelps suggested that within 3 to 5 years with this, there's going to be enough economic activity to more than pay for. I think this starts paying for itself immediately. And I would urge that we move forward with the strongest and most aggressive tax cut for this industry. And that should be the instruction of the city attorney.
So that would be the 12 million and beyond, with the newest, the new highest tax rate for any company would be $9,100.
It would be to change the maximum tax to $9,100. That would be great. That would be the way to do that.
Okay, I concur. Okay, so we'll do it that way.
Okay,
is that clear?
Okay, so absolutely. So the instruction in the CLA report, just to summarize, would be amended to make the maximum tax $9,100.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Mr. Wickham.
I know this.
I'm glad you understand this stuff.
Yeah, it's taken a number of conversations among city staff to try and settle that one out. So it's
okay. So we are essentially concurring with the staff recommendation in the CLA's report, with the exception of establishing a cap at $9,100. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, that would be the action. Mr. Krikorian and I concur on that. So we can move on.
Thank you.
Item number 2.
Item number 2 is an Office of Finance report relative to sales tax refund for purchases made for filming within the City of Los Angeles and related matters. This item was continued from the meeting of July 27, 2010.
Yes, I read the letter from the Director of Finance and or the Office of Finance, I should say. Both, I should say. But I actually don't have any problems with it, and would be fine with sending this on to City Council. Did you have any questions, Mr. Krikorian? Did you want to offer any other considerations?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to, if I may, briefly go over the report back to the committee. We do believe that a program such as a sales tax refund incentive for production companies is feasible. There are some concerns that Office of Finance has that I would like to speak to, but just in general, what such a program would entail would be a refund of the city's full 1% share of the local sales and use tax. So that would be a refund to the production company, assuming that they would qualify and assuming that the purchases that they engaged in that were subject to sales tax were qualifying as well. As we envision such a program, it would entail an incentive for film production companies as they're currently identified in the municipal code under section 21.109. And it would entail that purchases subject to sales tax in order to be qualifying would have to be made here in the city of Los Angeles so that the city would obtain the full 1% share of the local sales and use tax. We would also want to ensure that the film productions that were qualifying had a minimum threshold of at least 75% of the film production activity occurring here in the city of Los Angeles. In order to qualify for that. One of the concerns, however, that has been voiced, and it has also come up through research that Office of Finance has undertaken, is ensuring that there are some protections for the city to identify transactions that would not be qualifying. For example, purchases of equipment that were not an integral part of the film production activity, or purchases, let's say, of vehicles that were not utilized in the production activity and they were more personal use vehicles. So we would be identifying certain types of purchases that would be qualifying to ensure that the program did not encounter any type of abuse as other states' incentives have been noted to occur. The other issue as well is that Office of Finance is recommending that the CAO's office conduct an economic analysis to determine what the impact would be. Unfortunately, we do not have the ability to come back to the committee with what we envision the impact would be because we don't have the data in terms of the types of purchases, what the monetary values are. We don't capture that information from the business tax renewal forms that we receive. We've also had discussions with the city attorney's office, and we have received their concurrence that an ordinance would be required to provide the Office of Finance with the authority to issue a refund of sales tax under a program such as this. And then finally, we also have concerns in terms of implementation and ongoing administration of such a program, given that the Office of Finance's resources are currently constrained due to the budgetary impact from cuts as well as our ongoing mandatory furloughs. So currently, we have not been able to identify resources, whether it's programming costs to our system or staffing resources that would be able to administer this program, given the current economic condition of the city.
Well, I think almost all of those items are covered in your report to the committee.
That's correct.
So in approving the report, we would be approving a direction to, or recommending to the city council that the city administrative officer be directed to conduct an analysis, as you described. And I don't have a problem with some of the policy considerations that you inserted into the report. I would, it was my intent to approve this matter and send it on to council, which would include an instruction to the city attorney to develop the ordinance. I believe that is in your report, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay, I thought I saw it. So that would be my recommendation. Would you concur with that?
I think these are, you're right to raise some of the concerns for further analysis. And how this would impact durable goods purchases, for example, that are in some way allocated to a particular production, but could then be used for the next 5 years for productions that take place outside of California, for example. There are some issues that we have to think through, but for purposes of moving forward with the report, I think we should do it with all deliberate speed.
Great. So, and there is, by approving your report, we actually are incorporating some flexibility for the department to consider as it implements the program. So there is some flexibility built into this report that we would be approving. So Mr. Krikorian concurs with my recommendation to approve the Office of Finance report with recommendations and to send this on to City Council for final approval.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question? Part of the one of the qualifiers for eligibility is that 75% of the work take place within the city. Have we? And I'm sorry that I didn't see this in the report. If it's there, I apologize. But did we make a differentiation between whether that meant purchases that take place in the city as opposed to production days?
Well, I think both of those would be factors. We would be looking at purchases in terms of the particular expenditures that would qualify for the refund of sales tax. So that would be the first component to identify what purchases are qualifying. The second component is verifying that the production activity from which those expenditures, whether it's equipment, supplies, are indeed utilized here in the city. So the two components are, one, to ensure that the purchases do occur here in the city, which would guarantee that the city is entitled to the full 1% local share of the sales use tax. The second component is verification and assurance that the actual production activity, the filming, is indeed occurring here, and we set that threshold at the 75%.
75% of production days
Yes.
taking place in the city of Los
Correct.
Angeles. But
So
not 75% of the amount of purchases.
Oh, no, correct. No, to clarify.
Production days.
Correct.
The jobs creating production days is what we're after.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That will be the order. Item number 3, we have a presentation from Film LA regarding their marketing campaign.
Thank you very much for the invitation. We're going to defer a little bit on any real serious details on the campaign, but to tell you that in getting the schedules of people together, we postponed once and then a second time and started running into the election cycle. So you can put on your calendars on December 2nd. We will do the full announcement and exposure of this campaign to the world. We'll be doing a more formal invitation out for that event shortly. But we're very excited that we've gotten cooperation from so many people to provide in-kind and services to it, and we will be highlighting those as well at that time. And from our side, as part of our contract with the City for Marketing, we have just hired, and shortly we'll begin work, a webmaster to handle the 3 websites now that are promoting filming in the region. Film LA's this site that will be on the public education campaign, and Loco Scout, which promotes the city's facilities. I would offer, if you'd like, about 3 hours ago now, we released our quarterly statistics. If you'd like a quick rundown of those, I can give them to you.
Sure.
Year to date, the good news is we're still up about 11.3% of filming over last year. That's the good news. Third quarter, which started July 1 and ended October 1, we ended up barely breaking even on production days over last year's third quarter. Feature filming dropped 6.6% over last year, and we attribute that almost directly, based on our statistics, to the loss of amount of revenue available for feature film under the tax incentives. As you know, last year we had 200 million. This year we have 100 million, and we anticipated that that would cause a drop in feature production, and it is proving true. We're hopeful that that kind of message arrives in those discussing at the state level whether or not this is effective and how to increase that work. On the TV side, overall, we've seen a drop of 8.2%, led mainly by drama television dropping. We know that a good deal of that has to do with studios keeping people in-house, in particular earlier in the summer where there was anticipated job action on the street. Studios instructed their television programs to stay on lot. And we've also seen a trend over the years. It was typical that for each location there would be 2.4 days of shooting on the street. In this fiscal year, or calendar year rather, it gotten down to 2 to 1, and in this quarter it's 1.3 to 1. And I think this is driven by the economy factor for TV drama of they're trying to reduce the expense of the production by staying on lot instead of coming out into the streets with those. However, sitcoms and reality TV are up on the street doing more work, and commercials are up about 22%. So overall, we've seen a flat number between last year and this year, which isn't bad, but it's not where we'd like to see things going. We're hopeful that we can see some turnaround with that, both if the economy enables more expenditure to go outside, but also as the state debates in the future this incentive.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much for your report. We anticipate a December 2nd opening of our marketing program. Congratulations. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is the CLA report on the parking task force, including new lots discovered and the creation of a Google Map tool.
John Wickham with the CLA. Back in 2008, Council directed the CLA to assemble a terrible name, Downtown Parking Task Force, I think. Downtown Film Parking Task Force. It's a mouthful. And we pulled together stakeholders in downtown community, film industry representatives, city departments, city staff, to discuss ways to help coordinate filming in downtown Los Angeles, reduce the impacts on the neighbors, the residents, as well as help facilitate filming activities. One of the key results of that task force is a map that Clay McCarter in our office has put together, and so Clay's here to explain the map and the information that is available on it.
Good afternoon, Clay McCarter with the CLA's office. I reached out to the city, the county government, the federal government, the local government agencies, and instead of putting together just a simple list of all the parking lots that the film crews could use for their filming, I created a custom Google map, so people are very familiar with Google already, and they can look at this map and then click on the icon, and they're going to get details of each parking space. It's going to include the type, whether it's a lot or a structure, the hours that it's available, a contact information, and you can then click on the satellite photo and get a good idea of what's around the site. You can go to the street view level and interact with that to give you the best option to choose from. The site it's a private site, so it's on Google now. As long as the user has the web address, they can access it. And then as things change, we can update this and give them the most current information. So, and they can also print the map, and I've given you a printed copy as well, and that will list out each lot, and you can use the numbers to go back to the map and find where that lot is.
Film LA is putting this on their website, and as the city develops its website on film, this link can go on that site as well.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. And we could probably expand this not just to the concept of parking, but to prime film locations and other things. I know we looked at something in the 7th Council District very similar to that, and but this is a good format. I like it. We don't have any cards on this item. Let's see. Obviously, we want to instruct the CLA to work with Film LA to publicize the parking task force maps so that location managers will have access to a list of available lots, and to include the Google parking map in the website they are creating on film incentives for the city of Los Angeles. I guess there could be a link or something, right?
Sure.
And instruct the CLA to return to report on any additional recommendations and actionable items that could be taken by the council to help improve film parking conditions in LA based on their parking task force meetings and other observations. Do you concur, Mr. Kokorian? Okay, we have complete concurrence here, once again. And so thank you very much. Thank you very much. We look forward to your other recommendations as well. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a CLA report on meetings with location managers to identify city properties for filming, including newly purchased city properties in Chinatown and East LA.
John Wickham, CLA again. And I don't know if the CAO or the mayor's office would like to join me as well. Back in May, city staff initiated conversations with location managers of one-hour dramas. This was facilitated by Ed Duffy, and which we're very grateful and thankful for his help, and Film LA hosted these meetings. This was an opportunity to meet with location managers of one-hour dramas who had just finished their season to try and talk to them about the issues that they had in filming in the city of Los Angeles during the last season, identify ways that we could make corrections and adjustments before they start the filming in the coming season. So this is really trying to get out in front of some of these issues and try and facilitate the work that they're doing. The meetings were the mayor's office, council, District 7, CLA, CAO participated in the meetings, and they were one-on-one with each of the production managers. So I was able to get into a conversation with one person about the job that they do. And the great thing about it is everybody had positive things to say about the city and the work that they're doing in the city. They were very thankful for the things that the council had done, the changes that the departments were making. So there was a lot of good feedback about the work that the city was doing. There were also a lot of issues that came up that the location manager saw that needed to be corrected as well. Every production we discovered is different. They all have unique needs and issues. It was the production manager, the location manager for Bones, for example, came in. She needs places with holes because apparently in their production they dig up people or dig up, I haven't seen the show, but they need a hole in the ground so that they could film the hole in the ground. And, they need to dig holes sometimes in parks, and some of our parks are really uncomfortable digging a hole. So there were, engineering issues and things like that. And another production.
City Hall should be a prime location.
Yeah. Another production, they basically, the day they start filming, they hit the streets of LA and they're out virtually the entire 7 or 10 days that they're in production. So every production has a different number of days on the street, different type of work that they're doing. So it was very interesting. So some of the key issue areas that we ran into, one of the key ones was other agencies. So I'll start with other people's problems. FAA, on Shoot for 24, they were landing a helicopter on a helipad in downtown Los Angeles. FAA required that every person within 500 feet of that helipad be removed from the streets. So they were forced to clear out an entire 500 square foot area for safety reasons as an FAA regulation. MTA has trouble moving bus stops. The film production requested a bus stop be moved, it be posted, and MTA has trouble getting out there in time, in a timely manner to move those things. And then LAUSD is an issue in terms of the cost of using the campuses and making arrangements to get on the campuses. So there are a number of, the county beaches and harbors apparently is extremely difficult to work with. There have been a lot of issues there as well. County beaches and harbors. And there's an example that's coming up in a minute that was pretty stunning. So there are a number of other agencies that need to be reached out to, and I don't quite know how we do that as a city agency. We need to find other ways to talk to these other agencies. Within the city, traffic enforcement is an issue that it came up in a number of these discussions. The folks who are writing tickets on production vehicles and production staff vehicles that are perfectly permitted and appropriately permitted, but for some reason the traffic enforcement guy is writing tickets to them, which is costly. It takes a lot of time to try and process tickets that aren't going to get paid or should not be paid because they were properly permitted. Some of the ticket writers don't accept the Film LA permit as being a legitimate permit. So there were a number of issues there. And then a number of issues related to when private vehicles are parked in a posted spot, no parking for a film production. The film production will call to have the vehicle towed, and it'll take hours for the tow truck to come, well, for the enforcement to come out inside it, and then for the tow truck to come and tow the truck. So the production is held up for any number of hours in a spot where they are legally permitted to be doing their work, but they can't because other vehicles are in the way. We had an initial conversation with Department of Transportation about this. It seemed that things had gotten worked out on that, but within the last week, some other complaints and concerns have come in on that, so we're going to have to revisit that discussion with Department of Transportation. Fire Department, there were a number of concerns about the Fire Department and their practices. And your previous meeting where you discussed film issues, Fire Department made a presentation on the changes that they made in their program, and that was all in relation to these meetings that we had with the film producers, with the location managers. By January, they're going to have a list of pre-approved parking lots where it will no longer be required to have a fire inspector do a walkthrough prior to coming in. They have initiated a sheet that, on multiple day shoots, film producers or production location managers are concerned that an inspector would come in today and a new one would come in tomorrow, and they wouldn't talk, they wouldn't share information, and they would find new things and so there was no consistency. Fire Department has initiated a form that allows one inspector to pass along information to the next inspector for much greater consistency, which is really helpful. And then Fire Department is also extending the time when fire inspectors can be contacted to 10 o'clock at night. What was happening is the film shoot start time would change, and nobody would be able to contact the fire inspector. Fire inspector would call at 5 a.m., hey, where are you guys? Why aren't you out here on the site? And they say, well, look, we were trying to reach you, but we couldn't, and we're starting at 10, not at 5. So now they've got an irate fire inspector who's been sitting there for 5 years. Yeah. So Fire Department has found a way to improve their communications with the inspectors. So that was a positive result. Another item that came up was the number of monitors that wind up on production. Some productions wind up with an extraordinary number of monitors. There were two examples. One was a shoot in Griffith Park where the Recreation and Parks Department had assigned 3 monitors to the site, and each of those monitors had 2 trainees. They paid for the monitors. They did not pay for the trainees. However, they had 9 people who were running around that production trying to find things that had to be fixed or stopped or corrected or changed, and it was insane. They had 9 people trying to manage a site that didn't need 9 people. The other example was down at Venice Beach. And in this production, they were in the scene, they're throwing a cell phone out into the ocean. Well, the cell phone was on a fishing line, so they could, they weren't littering. But because it's Venice Beach, they had to have city rec and parks, they had to have county beaches and harbors, and as a result, they had 2 rec and parks monitors, 1 Film LA monitor, 1 fire department monitor, 1 county beaches and harbors monitor, 1 lifeguard, and 2 retired officers. So they had to pay for 9 monitors on a site where they were throwing a cell phone into the ocean and pulling it back out with a fishing line. So there needs to be some discussion with various agencies to make sure that we streamline the number of monitors and make that more productive, because that was excessive. There were requests to have more information about available city sites for filming, and because a number of the location managers have been out driving the city, and they'd see a building that looked like a civic building that wasn't being used, and it looked interesting. They would like to film there. And so part of that is working with Film LA to make sure that they have all of our sites, all our city properties on the site. And the city staff have been working to identify new things that come up. So recently the city purchased the Little Joe's property over in Chinatown, and we did a walkthrough on that to see if it was viable. It's not a viable site. That building is trashed. However, the CAO discovered or learned about the Albion Dairy site over on the other side of the LA River, and it looks like a very viable site. And until construction on that project begins, it could be used for film parking or filming activities. So we're now working to make sure that this information gets into the local scout database of Film LA as quickly as possible. 2 general issues. One was that the location managers are finding that the city staff will too quickly and too often just say no without any explanation of what no means, why they have a no. that they would really appreciate as city staff if they're saying no, they explain why. Because the location manager has to turn around and go talk to the director or the producers and say, this is why it's no. And if they don't have any information, they can't explain to the people who are making the decisions, and the location manager is stuck in the middle. So if it has to be a no, the city staff need to provide more information of why it's a no. It's just much more helpful and more productive in the conversation, and maybe it can be turned around to yes, or maybe they'll accept the no if they have a better understanding of why. And the other part is providing a timely response, because the productions are in such a tight time frame. They need to know if there's going to be a change as soon as possible. And there are a number of situations where at the very last minute, for example, I just heard about a library where they called a month in advance, the library had been booked and set for the filming. The day before, the library called and said, it's just not convenient to have that production here tomorrow. So let's try and find another day. Well, they're mobilizing 100 people, 150 people, and equipment, and that's just not acceptable. So city departments need to be more forward-thinking in these kinds of things, be able to respond more quickly. So these were very productive conversations, and we're very grateful to everybody who came in and provided their time and effort. So.
Well, it's amazing how much can get done when you just talk to folks. And my only question is, is there going to be a report that's emanating from your office on this, and with recommendations, perhaps?
We can do that if you would.
Okay, and this is going to be an ongoing activity?
It's helpful after, at the end of the season to try and, as well as with the major motion pictures. We also did this with a major motion picture earlier in the year, and it just. Okay,
well, if you could. So you're going to have sort of periodic meetings and with different categories of folks.
Yeah.
But I think it would be helpful to have a report so that we can keep a history of these meetings, so that we're not rehashing old issues that have already been solved. So I would ask that the CLA develop a report and with a list of recommendations, particularly recommendations that might give the council some guidance as to what we can do to make it easier for location managers to do their job, but more importantly, so that we don't hinder production.
Exactly.
Sounds like the conversations worked, and we ought to keep it going.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. Would you concur with that recommendation? Those recommendations?
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a report and recommendations so that as helpful as conversations are, it's important that they not just be conversations. It's important that we take the steps to start implementing some of these changes so that we don't have the same conversations 3 years from now that we had 3 years ago that we're having again now. So I welcome those recommendations so that we can start implementing some action.
Okay, then that will be the order, and let's move on to item number 6 is a receive and file item. Without discussion, that will be the order. Item number 7.
Item number 7 is a report by the city clerk relative to an ordinance regarding the Los Feliz Village Merchant-Based Business Improvement District reconfirmation procedure.
I don't have any concerns about that. We don't have any cards, so if Mr. Krikorian is nodding that he concurs with that, so we would approve that item. Item number 8.
Item number 8 is a city attorney report relative to a draft ordinance amending section 22.353.1 of the Los Angeles Administrative Code to provide for the waiver of use charges for filming and photography purposes in the city.
Right, he pulled it. Yeah.
Hi, Kimberly Mira from the City Attorney's Office. As you know, the current section expired in June 30th, 2010. We were instructed to draft an amendment changing the date to 2014. That is what you have before you. There is language in there that any permits that were issued between June 30th and the date that this code is ratified, that the fees would be waived for that. So we tried to put a stopgap measure in there.
Okay, then I recommend approval. Mr. Krikorian concurs. That matter is approved. And item number 5 is a note and file item at the request of Mr. Weezer. So our agenda is completed. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.